Can you hear me now? Yeah, all right, good. All right. So again, it's a little bit different to do it in this kind of format where we bring the monastery to you, but if you can, it would help me, unless you're really afraid to do so, to put your video on so I can see you, because I hate talking to a computer, you know, and it's important for me to actually be able to see somebody that I'm talking to. Otherwise, it's just kind of weird, you know. So I can't do it really that easy. I mean, it's hard enough, you know. So, all right, there's some people. That's nice. I know some people might be shy, so that's okay too. So we're in the Monastery Church right now, and I don't know how many of you guys have been to St. Tikhons Monastery. Just raise your hand if you have. Anybody? Nobody? Oh, wow. Just one? Oh, okay, one, two. All right, so a couple people have been here. And monastery was founded in 1905, which was way before I was born, way before you were born. And St. Tikhon of Moscow was actually the one who founded the monastery. He founded the monastery as a desire to have not only a monastery in America, but a seminary too. And a lot of times people think about the monastery as either just a monastery or a seminary, but we are both. We're both a monastery and a seminary. And so the great benefit of that is having people like Father Nick Wyslutsky, who organized our retreat today. He's one of our graduates. And so he's a product of the monastery, that monastery which has services every day. I mean, what question you oftentimes you might ask yourself, what does a monastery do? Why do they have monasteries? You know, I mean, you know why they have 7-Elevens, you know why they have Walmarts, you know why they have schools, but why do they have monasteries? Well, monastery is kind of like a big school, not only for priests, but also for the monastics, the monks, and also for all the people that come here, and all the people that maybe even just like you. You might be somewhere far away, but you're still kind of involved in a learning process. The monastery is a great place of learning, helping us to learn about who God is, what his life is like, and what it means to live with him, and ultimately to find him and to know him for real, not just for like you know, like a book learning, like, oh yeah, I know about Jesus. Yeah, he was about 6 feet tall. He wore a blue robe. He had brown hair, and he looks kind of like the icon. It's more than that. It has to be more than that. Otherwise, you know, with our faith, it's not like, you know, people have faith like, they think of faith like you think of the faith in like the Easter Bunny or maybe Santa Claus or something like that. But our faith is something that's actually real. St. Paul says that our faith is the substance of things which are hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Faith is evidence. It's not just like something that's like, oh yeah, your faith is good and my faith is good and your faith is different, so it doesn't really matter. Well, reality is it does matter. And our faith, there's evidence that helps us to see that our faith is not only true, but that God is who the church says he is, and that we can experience him. And that's the most important thing, that we actually begin or know that we can experience God. Very important. Because, you know, I don't know about you, but I need to experience things, you know. It's like, would you like to sit at home and go to a water park on Zoom? You know what a water park is, right? Right. You know what a water park is. You got to go in the water, right? You don't want to, would you like to Zoom into a water park? It would be kind of lame, wouldn't it? It'd be awful, right? I see a bunch of heads saying no. And the same thing with the church. It's like we have to experience it and know it and taste it and dive into it and really get it. It can't be something that we just think about, you know, because then it really won't affect us at all. Video games will affect us a lot more than the church will. So the good news is that God is something to be experienced. We can actually experience God. That's what the Orthodox church message is. We talk about it all the time, especially during Great Lent. The Sundays of Great Lent, a couple of them really deal with this, about how we know God, how we can experience God, and how we are meant to live with God. And, you know, this is like the Sunday of Orthodoxy when we celebrate icons. It's not just about icons. It's about something about the experience of God. And in St. Gregory Palamas, we celebrate the second Sunday of Lent, where again, it affirms that we actually experience God, that we have to know God in our body, in our mind, in our soul. We have to actually, it has to have something more than just like, oh yeah, Sunday's cool. When are we going to leave? You know, let's get to coffee hour. Are there donuts there? You know, there has to be more. So the monastery is actually a place of learning. It's like a place where we learn not only about God, but we learn to experience God here. And a lot of times the way we experience God is through difficulties, through the cross. Has anybody had any difficult times lately? Maybe some suffering, pain, anxiety, worry, distress, need? Nobody? Yeah, a couple people. That's part of life, but it's about how to actually, because I remember when I was really young, I'd always be afraid of everything, I'd be very anxious and worried about stuff, very fearful, about things I didn't know about monsters, about things that maybe, threats, war is always coming, whatever. Just, I was always kind of afraid of just maybe what might happen. And I think that, that doesn't sometimes go away unless we have God, and we have God in a way that's a little bit more real and that we can experience, because a lot of times the way that we come to know God is through those difficulties. And as we get older, we'll find that our difficulties will be the cross that God is offering us, and that we have to believe and have some faith about and in that God is like working through this, and that somehow God can use this. And then it's through that we actually come to a resurrection, which is the part where we kind of understand a little bit more about who God is. Because reality is that God is. There is a God. And neither me or you are it. So somebody created the world. Creator is a reality that here we are, like all of us, right? You guys are zooming over there. I'm zooming over here. How did that happen? Well, it's God. It's God's mercy. And so this place of St. Tikhons Monastery is, it said that faith is evidence of things not seen. This monastery is evidence of the existence of God. This monastery, if God didn't exist, or if Jesus Christ didn't really come to this earth and wasn't really truly God and man, which is what the Orthodox Church teaches, that he's both God and man. How that is, I don't know exactly how, but I know that it is. But if we didn't have evidence of that, if that wasn't a reality, then this monastery would have been gone a long time ago, because they tried to sell it several times during the Depression. It didn't have any money. There's nobody here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's there's a saying that God must really love St. Tikhons, otherwise it wouldn't be there anymore. It's against all odds that this place has continued to triumph and be the evidence of the God who cannot be seen, but who can be experienced, who can be encountered. And really, the monastery is a place of encountering God. And so, even though you may be far away, wherever you may be, Ohio or Florida or California or wherever you might be, somehow you're touching this monastery, and through that, there's a little bit of an experience. There's some evidence there of God, that he is real, that he's around, he's working still, and that you can experience him even through this strange medium called Zoom. So St. Tikhon of Moscow, again, the saints are oftentimes, again, more evidence of God working. St. Tikhon of Moscow was a great saint. He was amazing. He came to America in 1898, which is about 124 years ago. It's a long time ago he came here, came from Russia, and he was the bishop in America. So he actually was in San Francisco. He started there, and then he moved his diocese, the seat of the diocese, the center of it, to New York, I think in 1902 or something like that, maybe 1901. He traveled all over America. If you go to Colorado, you'll see this is where St. Tikhon was. He consecrated this church. He was in Alaska. He was in Washington State. He was in, you name it. I've traveled all over America, and I've seen evidence of St. Tikhon being there, churches consecrated and so forth. But he was a great saint. And he founded the monastery in 1905. He traveled everywhere extensively, trying to unite all the Orthodox people, because at that time, Orthodoxy was really, if this is the oldest Orthodox monastery in America, then it's not really that old, compared to maybe like the Catholic Church or something like that, who founded missions in like late 1700s. First Orthodox Church, I think, in the Americas, the most formal, like, first church was like early 1800s. So we're kind of behind a little bit. But he tried to pull everybody together. He was trying to make it so that people could be united as an Orthodox church in America. So he consecrated St. Raphael, the Bishop of Brooklyn. And St. Raphael was a Syro-Arab, and he studied in Russia. And he actually consecrated the monastery. He consecrated this altar that sits, see this, the royal doors here? There is an altar behind those doors, and he consecrated that altar in 1906. So St. Raphael is kind of a, if you looked back, you'll see it later on, but up on the choir loft, there's St. Tikhon and St. Raphael. They're both standing next to each other on the choir loft because both of them had a hand in the founding of St. Tikhon's monastery. So that's two canonized saints that were here, which is an important thing because, again, evidence that God is working in America and in the world. And sometimes we tend to think that God's not working. You know, we pray and we ask God for different things, and God doesn't seem to answer us. But I was told long ago that there are three answers to all prayers that God gives. There's only three answers that he gives. So we pray, oh God, give me this, or please help me with that, or please take this away, or, you know, whatever our prayers may be, there's always three answers. One is, the first answer is yes. It's not that typical, but sometimes it's offered. God says yes to our prayers. Another one is not yet. So we pray and nothing happens, and God basically is saying, not yet. And then the third answer that God gives to our prayers is, I have something better for you. So, you know, a lot of times we think that we shouldn't pray because maybe it's not working, but the reality is that we need to keep praying. And maybe what we're asking for is not really necessary, but God says to us, not yet. Or I have something better for you. And a lot of times the things that we don't get, we often will find other things if we continue to ask God for the things that we need. God will supply them in time. So, but God doesn't say no. That was my point. So, you know, for what it's worth, there's no no in God. There's only yes in Jesus Christ. That's what St. Paul says. All the promises of God in him are yes. So it's just how he answers us, really. So those are two of our saints. And then the third saint that we have is St. Alexander Hodobitsky, who wrote the early monastery history. If you go to the monastery website, sttikhonsmonastery.org, you can see the monastery history written by St. Alexander, the early monastery history. He went back to Russia. He was martyred in Russia, as well as St. Tikhon of Moscow. St. Tikhon of Moscow, he spent the whole summer here in 1906. And then he went back, he was recalled to Russia, and he became a bishop of the diocese there. And then he became the patriarch of all Russia. And eventually the Bolsheviks, they martyred him in about 1924 or so. So the Bolshevik Revolution took place in 1918, and that's when the communists took over Russia and a lot of Eastern Europe. It was a very bad thing and a very difficult time. When I was young, like in the 80s, which I guess is a long time away from right now, when I was your age, communism was still a big deal, and the Russians were kind of like the big bad guy. And everybody was afraid that they were going to launch their bombs, and we were going to launch our bombs, and it was something that was always kind of haunting all of us. So at least you don't have to deal with that. You got COVID, so I guess you got something to deal with, but you didn't have to deal with nuclear war as kind of an imminent kind of fear that you're always thinking about. But that was in part because of that, because the communist revolution took over. People in Russia in 1918, the whole thing fell apart. There was a czar who was a king, and basically everything in Russia just completely collapsed. And what happened was that a very small minority of people who hated the church, who hated God, who hated people, murderers of all kind of sorts and sizes and shapes, they took over Russia and Eastern Europe, and that's what the USSR was. It was this big giant state of people who hated God. They were atheists and God haters, and also murdered a lot of people. So they were not good people. But because of that, the monastery was suffering. You know, when that revolution took place in 1918, a lot of the money that came to the monastery that supported the monastery was actually from the king of Russia. So we lost a lot of support and a lot of money. And eventually, 10 years later, they tried to auction St. Tikhons Monastery off. And fortunately, one of our parishioners bought it back for us. I think his name was, what was his name? Russin. Mr. Russin bought it back for us in 1931, I think. 1930, 1931. So we're still here, and that's a good thing. St. Alexis was another one of our saints. He was called the father of the Orthodox Church in America. He was brought about between his converts and the people he brought in, and then their children into the Orthodox faith from Byzantine Rite Catholicism. About 400,000 people came into the Orthodox Church. So it was a very substantial number of people that came into the Orthodox faith through his direct effort, through his work. Again, more evidence. 400,000 people coming into the Orthodox Church, that's a lot of evidence that God is working and helping, because really God is the one who gives us, I don't know how old most of you guys are. When I was about 10, I felt like I really kind of just had a brief understanding of who God was, like an experience of God for just, a few days or whatever it was. I don't know how long it was. But I was in church, I was serving at the altar, and somehow it was like God it was like everything was just very real. Everything became real all of a sudden, and I realized that maybe I should try to follow God and be with God and live with God, and it became something that was kind of like a benchmark or a milestone in my life, because I needed some evidence. Again, I'm one of those people who needs evidence. And that everything, it wasn't just my brain or my heart or just some kind of feeling. It was like I understood in that moment, for that brief space of time, that all this stuff was real and that I should probably be a priest. And so here I am today. I'm a priest. I'm an abbot. It's a terrible thing sometimes because I got a lot of work to do, but here I am. And it's because of that experience. It's because of that evidence that God was real and that this stuff is real, and that, all the stuff that the church teaches is true. And I can't exactly explain to you why that is. I just know that it is. And I experience it on a daily level by my own life, So, but the most important thing though is that you know that you can experience it too. And that you know that it's not just a feeling or a nice kind of pretty picture or some kind of nostalgia or something like that, but it's real. And there's a bunch of people, in fact, I think maybe more than 1 billion that have, lived and died, more than, several billion people that were Orthodox and that attested that this is the right way. This is a good way. This is the right way. And that it is a way that leads to life. And really, at the end of the day, really, it's about life and death, spiritual life and death. Problem with this world is that we all die. And from our standpoint as Orthodox Church, that is not natural and that's not normal. It's not a good thing. We may have to deal with it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that God created it. He allowed it. And our whole fight is against the death that lives inside of us, whether it's on the physical level, the emotional level, the spiritual level. That's why we are a life-affirming church. We don't kill anybody. We're against killing. It's a bad thing to kill people. Why? Because God's not only said so, but I wouldn't want it done to me. Whether it's abortion or, people on death row, or, people eye for an eye, if you hurt me, then I'm going to hurt you. This is not the way of Christ, because it doesn't lead us to life. And we are a life-affirming church. So there's certain activities even that we can do in our life, let's say taking drugs or something like that. That doesn't lead to life. It leads to death eventually. Like being an alcoholic, that leads to death. Typically, you could get a car accident, you could drink yourself to death, whatever. All these things, we are a life-affirming church. And so any activity that moves us towards death, we say no to. We can't affirm. We can't say that that's the right way. And anything that is leading unto life, which is leading towards Christ, which is leading to God, we affirm that and we say that's the right way. So that's the basic kind of message of Orthodoxy. It's a message of life. It's a religion of the heart. It's a faith of the heart. It's something we experience in our heart, not in our head. And it's something that we have to affirm, a life-giving church. And that's why when we receive the Eucharist, that's basically what we're receiving. We're receiving life himself. Christ is, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So this life is what we're given in the church. And it's kind of a miracle. You know, I only know really three things that work in this world. I've been around for a while. I'm 46 years old now. It seems like I'm on the downward trajectory. However, I know three things that work besides Advil and Pepto-Bismol. Three things are confession, communion, and prayer. If we learn how to pray, everything will be okay. And if we can always talk to the priest and tell them what's actually wrong, what we're actually thinking, what we're actually questions that we have and problems that we're having, if we can always address the priest and talk to him honestly, there's always hope for us. And if we can go to communion, then we'll always die in the state where we have life. So even if we die, we'll still live. So following Christ is about those three things. Those are the three easiest things I can offer to you that actually work: communion, confession, and prayer. And the prayer, you know, it's pretty easy on some basic, well, I should say simple, it's not easy. But everybody knows the Jesus prayer, right? What is it? Can anybody tell me? I can't even hear any of you, so I guess, I don't know. Yeah, well, I guess I can't ask questions, but maybe we'll get to that. But it's simple. It's Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy upon me. What it is, it's a confession of the divinity of Jesus Christ as Lord, and a confession asking for God's mercy and of my need for that mercy, which is something which is, we always need help, you know. So anyway, so those are our three saints, and then we have, Saint Alexis, that's the fourth saint, and then the last saint is Saint Nikolai of Zichev. There's a lot of other saints too that have lived here and walked here and taught here, but these are the five main ones that are canonized. We're in the middle of canonizing possibly Metropolitan Leonti. He is just buried right behind me over on that side. But that's in process. It's going to be quite a while. And there's a lot of other saints known and unknown that you know, very holy people that have lived and are buried here. So St. Nikolai of Zichev was our rector, the rector of the seminary. The seminary was founded in 1938. And the rector was the guy who was in charge of the seminary. He was a great saint. He wrote, he preached. He was just an amazing person. And a lot of people that I know who, you know, may still be alive, some of them still are alive, knew him and spoke of how wonderful he was and just amazing. You know, he would come into the church, this very church where I'm sitting now, and he'd go over to the icon and he would go to the icon of Christ and he would give it a big kiss every morning and say quite loudly, "Good morning, Lord Jesus." And then he would go over to the icon of the Mother of God here and he would kiss that icon right there, which you can't see, but it's a little bit further over. She was quick to hear. They would say, "Good morning, Virgin Mary." And then he would go over to the Saint Nicholas, and, you know, this is Saint Nikolai. So he's a great saint. And again, the saints are evidence. They're people who not only followed Christ, but manifested something else in their lives. It's not just plain kind of whatever. It's something that's real. When you meet a saint, you know, something that's tangible. And they also have evidence in their lives. So like St. Alexis bringing in 400,000 people in the Orthodox faith. St. Raphael being able to travel. He traveled all over America trying to establish parishes and churches. He died in 1916 at the age of 55. Very, you know, that time is probably about normal, but for our time, it's young. But just tirelessly working. St. Tikhon of Moscow, I mean, an amazing image of humility and sanctity, holiness. Somebody who, in the face of the worst possible circumstances of the Bolshevik Revolution, basically continued to serve the church and lead the church. And you see lots of amazing things in his life and all the lives of these saints. Evidence of God's reality and his activity and his life in those people. And you see the life of Christ in those people. We need evidence, you know? I don't know about you, I need evidence. And God will provide it. If we have the right questions and if we keep praying and asking, God will help us to understand. And it has to come from above. It's not something I'm going to figure out like a math equation. God's not an algebra problem, you know. It's something else. It's above us. It's from beyond. It's above. It's, you know, it's greater than any of us even put together. So St. Tikhons is a great place. I would encourage you to visit the monastery and the seminary. You're going to get a little tour today, which is cool. You can just do that from the, you know, from your couch, which is not that bad. Yeah, I had to come over here from my couch, so at least I got up out of my room. But you don't even have to do that. You can kind of walk around. Father Stephen will be giving you a tour, just a little bit of the church and of the museum, which has been newly renovated. We had a performance there the other day. You can look on the Music of St. Tikhons and see the performance that we had there last Friday. It was kind of exciting. We also have a music program there now. So if any of you guys are ever thinking about doing music or want to be a music choir director, it's a good place to go. It's a year program. It might not be immediately for some of you guys, but maybe in a few years. Seminary is also always a possibility. You know, it's a great thing to be a deacon. I wouldn't necessarily recommend being a priest though, because it's so hard. But being a deacon is a great thing. You get to serve at the altar, you get to run around, you get to help people, you get to serve, and you don't have any of the responsibility. So that's wonderful. As a priest and as an abbot of a monastery, there's a lot of responsibility there. So as a deacon, you just get to have all the fun. So I can take some questions if you have them. I don't know who will moderate though.
If you have questions,
I think you can raise your hand. Or Father Nicholas could be the moderator too.
So if you have questions, go ahead and unmute and ask a question. Anybody have one? Don't be shy. I guess they don't have any questions, Father Sergius. We must have answered them all.
Come on, you guys. I can way out here to the Zoom land.
Nobody has a question? I have a question, Father Sergius.
When was he born?
When was who born? Me or Jesus?
Ask your question again. You asked when somebody was born. What were you asking?
Jesus.
When was Jesus born? Well, Jesus was born quite a while ago. We can safely say that it was probably somewhere between 4 BC and 0. But it's quite phenomenal that our whole calendar is based on Jesus. So it's before Christ and Amodamali or something like that, which means just after his death. So our whole world basically rotates around the Lord. And some people don't like that because they don't like Jesus. So, you know, that's just their problem, really. But the fact remains, though, is that our world is largely still centered on God, whether people don't want to be or not. And there's, you know, just as an aside, you know, a lot of times people in our modern world, they don't like to talk about God. God's not mentioned very much anymore. And, you know, we don't have to push our faith on anybody. But if push comes to shove, it's always important for us to be who we are. And I think that's why the evidence and the experience of God is so important, because if we don't have a real experience of God, we might very easily say, well, what does it all matter anyways? But the more that we ask God to help us to know, to grow, and to understand what our faith is and why it's important, that evidence is something that, you know, when let's say like somebody helps you, right? Like, let's say you're hungry or something, or maybe you're hurting and somebody comes over and picks you up and cares about you. Well, that's evidence of their love. It's evidence of their care. And so it's through that we actually love them more. And so in the same way, when we reach out to God and he answers us, when he lifts us up, when we're having difficulty, when we pray and our prayers are heard and God is, you know, becomes apparent that he's around and he cares, we love him more. It's evidence that actually leads us to a greater faith, a greater ability to be able to stand up in a world that oftentimes, you know, we don't have to get in anybody's face. We don't have to knock on anybody's doors. but we do have to be faithful to the Lord in our heart. And that means first and foremost that we try to follow Christ in the way that we treat other people, that we try to be kind. We don't punch people, we don't hit people, we don't say bad things about people. We try to pray for people, especially the people that are not good to us, the people that hurt us. You know, the most important sermon that you can offer somebody is the life that you live. And when you live a good life, when you love people and when you treat people well, it's a way that we can preach a sermon. Why? Because that love will tell them that we're disciples of Christ. We don't have to tell everybody. We don't have to carry a card. We don't have to have a t-shirt on. We don't have to wear a little bracelet that said, what would Jesus do? All we have to do is live our lives as God would want us to live, which is to love each other, which is to love God and to be kind to people, to put other people before ourselves and try to think about other people. Like there are other people in the world besides me and you. Being able to take care of them and to acknowledge them, acknowledge their pain, to see them and try to help them. This is the gospel in a very simple, kind of easy way. It's a good beginning for all of us, and it's something that we need to remember. It's like the person sitting next to you right now, that's your neighbor. You have to try to love them. You know, it might be your sister or your brother, you're driving you crazy. Well, put up with them a little bit more. You know, don't yell at them next time. Whatever it is, it's like it could be a small thing, but it's a big deal. Little by little, that's the way we make our way to the kingdom. And it's that love that we show for each other and that kindness. And you know, what is love? You know, it's very easy in our world to say, like, I don't know what love is. Well, St. Paul tells us what love is, you know, and I look at it all the time. It's in the epistle to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 13. And he said, love is patient. Love is kind. Love doesn't think evil. Love suffers long. Love, you know, hopes all things, believes all things. You know, there's a certain way that we have to act in love. It's not just something that we feel, it's something that we actually do. Love is not just a feeling, it's something that I do. And I do for you. It's important, you know, it's important to make that distinction, because if we don't, I think we'll always think that we have to feel good about our lives and our situations and, you know, about living for Christ. And the reality is it's a little bit painful sometimes. Love oftentimes involves pain, and it's a cross. You know, if God is love and Christ shows us who he is through the cross, well, guess what, folks? That cross is love, and it's some pain in there. And it's a painful reality that we ourselves will sometimes have to embrace. Why? For the sake of the other person and trying to follow Christ. So I don't want to scare anybody, but the reality is we're going to experience pain in this world, but we can use it to speak to God with, to know God through, and ultimately to find resurrection with and because of. So pain will come our way, difficulties, trials, all sorts of things, all kinds of crosses, but it will be up to us to offer them to God and say, Lord, help me. Lord, forgive me. Lord, strengthen me. Lord, guide me. Lord, show me what to do. And this conversation that we have with God will lead to our resurrection. And that's the most important thing that we can have. Because it's through that we'll have evidence that God loves us and that we know God as he is, not as people say he is, but as he is. We'll know it. And through that, we'll be able to confess it and live it even more deeply.
Father Sergius?
Yes,
Alyosha Adams asked what the name of the choir directing program is at the seminary now.
well, it's actually at the monastery. It's a monastery-run program, so they're going to hopefully certify it at the seminary. But as of right now, we're just kind of, there's going to be a music program. There is a music program, and there's going to be an art icon studio program as well, an art school, iconography school. It's going to be, again, directly under the monastery. And the program really is just called St. Tikhons Music Program. If you want to check it out, look it up online, sttikhonsmusicprogram.com or .net. I don't know which one it is, but St. Tikhons Music Program. If you look that up, you can find out what's happening. We have workshops, you know, that are going on. So if you or your mom or your dad or somebody that you know, one of your choir directing friends or family members wants to come to a workshop, I think the next workshop is 2 weeks from this Saturday. It's on December 10th, so there's one every month. And the program for choir directors is a year long, and it's something that's really needed in our church right now. So we're trying to address that need. And it's program's going great. So, and eventually we'll have a program for iconographers. So that iconography program will also be hopefully up and running within about, maybe a year from this coming spring. So spring 2023, something like that. So stay tuned. It's nice to be with you guys. I hope, I want to welcome you again to St. Tikhons Monastery. This is the place where saints have walked. 5 of our canonized saints and many unknown saints have lived here and provided evidence for us of the activity of the God who we know to be Jesus Christ, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one of the Holy Trinity, truly both God and man, our Lord and Savior, the Savior of all who believe. So let us give thanks for this opportunity to meet together, for you guys to come to the monastery in this unique way. And Father Stephen's going to be coming in just a minute to give a tour of the church, and then there'll be a bit of a break, and you guys will go to the museum, okay? So God bless you. It's nice to be with you. Be well, be safe, and God bless.
Thank you, Father Sergius. God bless you. Pray for us.
May God bless. Father Stephen will be here in just 1 minute. You're gonna walk around too far.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody, if you need a little bit of a break, you can sneak away for just a little bit, and then Father Stephen will be here.
Disengaged because they're it's just a I think Father.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen.
Hello, Father Stephen. How are you?
Good to see you.
Thank you for giving us a tour today.
Sure. So I guess want to pick up the camera.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna pick up the camera and flip it around the other side. When we'll have to turn it off when we go over to the museum. The internet won't, so we'll just leave the call and then call back in.
Okay.
And let me flip this camera around.
Okay. So this is our monastery church, and I'll just try to show you what I can, and let me know if you have any questions. Of course, obviously the Iconostasis here. The way that monastery church looks is mostly from around 1965. It was reconsecrated by Metropolitan Leonti a few months before it was proposed. And so that's mostly the way it looks. The Iconostasis and the icons on the walls are from that period. But the monastery church was actually built in 1905, completed in 1906. And so the building is still here. This is where the monks used to live, where the kitchen, the dining room, everything was self-contained in this building, the chapel. And so where the altar is now, I think where I'm standing was where the chapel was originally, but this was all redone. So this is all from about 1965. We've had some recent renovations that have been done both to the monastery church. Notably on the Iconostasis, we had some wood week that was done on the Royal Doors. And there have been some other additions over the years that have been made. I've been called Herman. I've got this candelabra that's over the Royal Doors. It's going to be acquired. And we'll just go through some of the icons that are in the church. This icon of Christ, holy napkin. This was an icon of Christ not made by hands. This was one of the original icons in the monastery. So this was here when the monastery was founded, and also this one here, the Mother of God, is also here, and the 2 saints. So we retain those, of course, and then also this icon of she's quick to hear. This is from Mount Athos, from the monastery of St. Pantaleon, and it's considered a miracle work, the icon of the Mother of God. And it comes out of the Iconostasis, and sometimes we've visited parishes with it. I believe we visited St. Peter and Paul's in Ohio once with it. But sometimes we've done that, so it does come out. And we've done some other like renovations, cleaning of the icons, and some kind of basic things, so I guess to kind of keep things fresh. So, but anyway, so this, yeah, most of this is from the 1960s. This year, of course, is the relics of St. Alexis Talk, and St. Alexis was canonized here in 1994. And we really wouldn't be here at St. Tikhons if it wasn't for him. You probably know the story of St. Alexis, but if he hadn't converted to Orthodox Christianity and really brought, it was really him who brought Orthodoxy to the East Coast of America, and that was because of his labors that St. Tikhon, our monastery founder, moved his cathedral from San Francisco to New York City. And that was the reason why we're here. That the monastery's location was chosen because of its proximity to New York City. There used to be a train that used to travel from this part of Pennsylvania, bringing coal to New York City, and that was part of the reasoning behind choosing this location. So we're really, it's through his prayers and labors, St. Alexis, that we're really here. So we're grateful that he's in our church now as a canonized saint. So it's something that, again, that you can come venerate about St. Alexis.
So just to be clear, Father, is that this is, his whole body is in there, right?
His whole body, right? So there's a coffin inside of this, and we've taken the coffin out a few times on his feast days. Well, his feast day is, I believe, May 6th, when he reposed, and we've, a couple of times since I've been here at least, we brought the coffin out for veneration. But it's inside this reliquary, so, and when he was originally buried at the monastery, I believe he reposed in 1909, he was buried here, and then he was reinterred into the monastery, the crypt behind the monastery church. And when they reinterred his body in 1916, they found that his body was incorrupt, that it had not decomposed in those 7 years that he had been buried in the ground. And so that was one of the things that I think that was part of the consideration of his, canonization, I suppose. That was that was kind of a sign of his sanctity. So again, we're grateful that he's here and by his prayers. And Father Sturgis always says that every year on his feast day, on May 6th, there's always some sort of miracle that happens for the monastery. Something from St. Alexis. So we're very grateful to his presence. This here is where on the Claros. This is Sicilia, where the monks might sit or stand during services, and also on the other side here, there's more Sicilia for the monastery, and also the monastery choir. We'll go over here. This is where confessions are normally heard and panagidas. We recently had a renovation of this room. You can see we had painted by our iconographer Yvonne. He did sort of a Jerusalem scene here with the crucifix. This is all Yvonne's work. And also, around the same time, we had these medallions that were put here on the choir balcony. And so these are all Yvonne's work also. So we have some of the saints of saints that were here, which is Saint Alexis, Saint Alexander Hodobitsky, Saint Economosco, Saint Raphael of Bhutan, and also some other saints in North America that are also represented here. On the top of the choir balcony, you can see there's a Pentecost scene, the Mother of God, and the flames of fire descending on the 12 apostles. And over here we have an icon of Saint Seraphim Sirach, praying, and then over on this wall, an icon of Saint Sergius of Iconostasis being visited by the Mother of God. And over in this room here, we have some more relics of saints. Here is Saint Herman of Alaska. This is an icon that was used at his canonization in Alaska in 1870. And of course, a relic of him here. In this room, we have some more icons and relics that are kept here. Notably, Saint Solomon the Aconite, an icon and relic of him here. Saint Nikolai of Zicha, Saint Nikolai of Japan, excuse me, a relic of him. Saint John of San Francisco, Saint John the Baptist, Saint Daniel of Moscow, Saint Raphael of Brooklyn, and our patron saint, Saint Tikhon of Zdansk, Saint Tikhon of Moscow. In the icon here, he's shown holding the monastery church because he was our founder. Our monastery was named after his patron saint, and so his patron saint was Saint Tikhon of Zdansk, and that was how we became Saint Tikhon of Zdansk Monastery. Over here we have an icon and relic of Saint Seraphim Sirach, and here in the icon is painted his priest's stole, and it's something that we have here at the monastery. So it's here in the icon, it's just painted, but it's actually a tertiary relic that we have at the monastery. It was given to the monastery a number of years ago. So we bring it out on his feast day. And then here is an icon of Saint Nikolai of Zicha, who lived here and taught at the seminary and died here at the seminary building in 1956. And so a relic of him here. And then here, of course, is Saint Panteleimon, the child martyr and early church martyr, and the relic of him embedded in the icon. This icon is from Saint Panteleimon Monastery in Mount Athos, along with the She is quick to hear icon from the same place. And so this came to the monastery at about the time of its founding. Originally, the monastery was actually going to be named Saint Panteleimon Monastery, because the first Orthodox chapel on this property was actually dedicated to Saint Panteleimon. It was it was an orphanage here. There was a farmhouse with orphans that were living on the property. And there was a nun from Syria who was looking after the orphans, and they had a hallway chapel dedicated to Saint Panteleimon. Our monastery's first abbot, Father Arseni, writes in his journal about how he served the first vigil service in that chapel, hallway chapel, with the orphans. It was a vigil service dedicated to Saint Tikhon of Zdansk, but it was in the Saint Panteleimon chapel that they had. So that was the first Orthodox vigil on the property. But later, when the monastery was built and completed, there was a decision at a clergy meeting in Old Forge, and they decided, actually the clergy, along with the bishop, they decided they would name the monastery St. Tikhon of Zdansk Monastery. So that was in 1905. So we'll move out here. And just incidentally, St. John of Kuchurov was part of that clergy conference in 1905 that named the monastery. So there is sort of a connection with him also. St. John of Kuchurov was the first martyr in Russia by the Bolsheviks, and was in this part of Pennsylvania when the monastery was founded. So I don't know if there's a record of him serving here, but he certainly was kind of part of the monastery's founding in some way. So at least his name. So here, we have a icon of our patron saint, Saint Tikhon of Zadonsk, with an icon here. That's mostly the monastery church. Are there any questions that anybody has?
I'm gonna go ahead and flip this around
Okay.
so you can see if anybody has questions.
If you want, go ahead and unmute, or you can message me and I'll share your questions with Father Stephen. Father Stephen, I have a question that you can answer for me. What is the number of monks in the monastery currently?
You know, yeah, I'm not sure if I have the correct number, but I believe it's about 16, 17, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. Kind of how you count it too, because I think Bishop Alexis is still considered part of the Brotherhood, but now he's in Alaska. Metropolitan Tikhon is part of the Brotherhood, but of course he lives in Syosset. So these things, I guess it depends how you define it.
Okay. Anybody else have a question for Father Stephen?
How many icons are there?
A lot. That's yeah. That's kind of the short answer, but yeah, I've never counted them, so I don't know the answer. That's good.
They actually at the monastery have a repository of icons, so there's many more icons than just the ones that Father Stephen has shown us in the church.
And many more relics too.
Yeah, and more relics. We don't keep all our relics out, so we bring them out on feast days. Some of the relics are out now, but not all of them by any means. So, yeah.
So, somebody wanted to know how many of the Theotokos.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know how to even.
She's above the altar. She's on the royal. There's 3 on the Iconostasis.
Yeah.
There's 3 in the nave. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8. There's 9. 9 are at least in the church. 11. There's a lot of just in the Theotokos. There's a lot.
There's a lot. Another question, Father Stephen, from Alyosha. He asked, first he asked, what do the monks eat?
It depends. So we follow the fasting rules of the church, and so that would typically be like on Wednesdays and Fridays. We wouldn't eat any dairy products. In the monastery, we don't. We eat seafood, but we don't eat any regular animals. So we wouldn't eat chicken or beef in the monastery, or pork or anything like that. But we do eat fish and certainly on feast days. And during this particular fast that we're in, Nativity, monastery abstains from fish as well, except for on weekends. So it's pretty much what you'd see on your church calendar, except that the monastery wouldn't eat animal products. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Thank you, Father Stephen. Someone asked if it's possible to see the altar. I know that traditionally isn't so.
Yeah, I guess we could go into the sacristy, right? And just
Look at it from the side.
Yeah, I guess we could do that, right? I don't know. I don't really have a blessing to go in there and show it to you.
Right. I understand that. And that's fine. If it's traditionally the altar isn't somewhere where we don't go in the altar without a purpose.
So if somebody does want to see the altar, another way that you could see it is if they went to the monastery streams services.
Okay.
And so like when the altar is revealed during the service, the cameras are there. So if you wanted to go and see what a monastery service looks like, you could go to the monastery's YouTube channel, and you would see the most recent services. And there you both hear it, and you would see the people, and you would see what it looks like through the royal doors. That would be an option.
Yeah.
Excellent idea, Father Ignatius. Thank you.
What does the view look like where like the chorus is?
Where the choir is?
Go
I
upstairs.
could show, I could take you upstairs. Or Father could take you upstairs. I'm just holding the camera. I'm actually gonna flip the camera around so I can see what I'm looking at for that.
Okay.
So this is where we do our live streaming, which we're doing regularly on Saturday evenings and Sunday mornings. This is kind of the setup we have here. It's kind of covered, but we live stream from this position, and you can see the view here of the church.
Some people have never seen it.
And then I guess they're asking what it looks like where the choir is. Sort of up here. That's where the choir would stand. Well, unless it's the monks, the monk choir would be up in the monks' kleros.
Right, down there, that would be where the monastery choir would normally be singing on the clarions. So we do have mixed choir, part of the music program as well. Mixed choir typically on Sundays, and during the school year, it seems that we're doing mixed choir on Saturday evenings for vigil as well. So both male and female singers by mixed choir. So.
All right, hold on. There's somebody here asking a question. I'm gonna flip this back around so you can see.
Okay.
Well, they keep, to all of you that are asking icon questions, I think Father Stephen's answer is going to be the same. There are a lot of icons at St. Tikhons.
Yeah.
You know, having lived there for a long time, there's too many to count. So to ask Father Stephen for a number of the icons of the saints in the church, that's probably like asking how many grains of sand are on the beach. So you know, just to help him. I know you're all interested in, and I'm sorry that we couldn't have this retreat physically for all of you. Someday we can do that. There's another question. 7 years old. What time do the monks get up in the morning?
Well, there's no set time. I suppose it probably depends on the month, but our service typically in the weekdays begins at 6 a.m. So, you know, some monks may get up earlier or later, but the church service will begin at 6 a.m. So, you know, doing your daily prayers, it's just kind of a matter of just fitting that into the schedule of the services. So.
Father Stephen, can you share with them, if you know the history of the church itself, how it wasn't always a church per se?
Right. So the monastery church used to be the monastery building itself, where the monks, they lived here, their rooms were here, they slept here, the kitchen, the dining room, everything was self-contained in this building. So it was a wood building. Now it's a brick covered building, but the original building is actually still here. It's just been kind of transformed into a church, and there were some additions that were made later. So the way, as I mentioned, I think before, the way the church appears now is mostly from the mid-60s, 1965. It was reconsecrated by Metropolitan Leonti a few months before he reposed. So maybe we can go outside and can we go around the church?
Yeah,
maybe?
we should be able to do that. As long as it's been snowing / raining, so I don't want my tablet to get wet outside. So let's see if it's still raining.
Yeah.
We'll appreciate anything you can offer, Father Ignatius.
Oh, of course, happy to help. But it just was, you know, Pennsylvania's winter is starting to show up. So. That's not too bad.
What's your favorite part of the church?
Well, I'm going to flip the camera back around so I can see again.
Here's the entrance of our church. See, we have a a icon of Christ on the top here. We painted our church. It was just a couple year and a half. It's all kind of recent the way it looks on the exterior. We'll walk around the church.
Still the tombs too then.
It's white now.
How many saints are there?
There are a lot of saints, sweetheart. Thousands and thousands.
So here behind the monastery church is the grave of Metropolitan Leonti. This is where he's buried. He was a very saintly bishop, very important bishop for our church. As I mentioned, we consecrated our church in 1965. 61 people died.
The wind is taking away your audio, Father.
See if I can get a little closer.
Yeah.
I can try putting the other mics back on, but before then we couldn't hear you for some reason.
Right. No, if he's close, it will help. But the wind blowing on the microphone is taking away the audio a little bit.
So the grave of Metropolitan Leonti, so I was just saying that he was a very important bishop for our church, for the Russian mission in America, from the time of basically when he came to America, which I'm not sure which year he came to America, but he was formerly in charge of the seminary that was in Minneapolis. And then later he became the rector of the cathedral in New York City. And his wife died. He was a married priest. His wife died, and then he became bishop. And later the head bishop of the Russian mission, which was known as the Metropolia at the time. Very important bishop for our church, and really kept things together through some very difficult times. Some of you might know that during these times when Russia was under a communist rule, the Bolsheviks had the Bolsheviks had taken over the church, and they were suing for properties in North America. And Metropolitan Leonti, when he was the rector of the cathedral in New York City, he was evicted from his cathedral because of a lawsuit. They lost the property, and so he went through many tribulations, you could say, in his lifetime. But many people who recall him say he was just a very saintly man, very much at peace with everybody, and we're grateful to his presence here. This here is the now empty tomb, empty crypt, St. Alexis, where he was reinterred in 1916. And now it's empty. So he was brought out of this crypt. In 1994, he was brought out, and then he was brought into the monastery church and canonized as a saint in 1994. So now it's an empty tomb. Behind us over here, I'll just point out, since we're here, this is another chapel. I don't have the key, I don't show you right now, but it's a chapel dedicated to all saints in North America. And we're using this on Sundays right now for an early morning liturgies. We have 2 consecutive liturgies on Sundays typically now during the seminary sessions. And it's kind of a simple chapel. It's kind of a new chapel. But another space where we can have services as needed. So the front part of it was built to resemble the old bell tower. And so actually the old bells are up there. We don't use them though. We have a different bell tower we use, but this is, anyways, this is designed to resemble the old bell tower, but also has what was formerly the museum, icon repository behind it. But we'll go see that shortly. That's now in a different location. Now this is a chapel. So here's the cemetery. here, and then in the middle is structure. This is called Bhutan's chapel, and it's actually an empty structure. There's nothing inside of it, but it's sort of ornamental. And Metropolitan Bhutan, who's also another important bishop for our church, he's buried behind it, and also Archbishop Arseni, our first abbot of our monastery, is buried beside it as well. So, it's really just an ornamental chapel, though. It doesn't serve any purpose other than kind of a focal point of his cemetery.
Father Stephen, there's two more questions you might want to answer while you're there. First question was, what's your favorite part of the monastery?
Favorite part? Probably the monastery church. Yeah.
And the second one is, are you planning on having a Memorial Day pilgrimage this year?
I believe so. That's subject to change. Well, as far as I know, we are. Okay. So we'll find out. But that's up to Father Sturgis ultimately. So I think the hope is to have one. We always hope to have one, but it depends on the circumstances and what kind of advice we're getting from doctors. And we were hoping to have one last May, but we were advised not to. So our abbot made the final decision not to have one, which is unfortunate, but that's what it was. So.
The last question that they asked was, how long do you have church for?
So typically, our services, like in the weekdays, begin at 6 a.m. We're typically done around 8 a.m. So it's about 2 hours in the morning. And then in the evening, it's also about 2 hours. Typically, we start at 4:30 and we go to about 6:30 maybe. So it's about 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening. That can change, of course, according to the liturgical cycle of the year. So festal liturgy might be longer, as well as a vigil might be longer. It just depends on at the time of year and what service it is. So yeah.
Thank you.
Get a shot of the bell tower.
So
Okay, we'll do that.
it's worth going. I don't know if it's worth going all the way around. Maybe we should just go to the museum. Let's do that. To the bell tower. Okay. So this is our bell tower. I believe it's called the Millennium Bell Tower.
I'm not certain.
And these bells were acquired by Metropolitan Herman. They're very nice bells, very beautiful bells from Russia. And Father Nicholas probably knows better than I do. I believe this was built in the 1980s.
Yes, it was built for the Millennium. It was actually built for the Millennium, so 1988.
1988. So that's to be the millennial baptism of Rus. But the bells themselves that we have now were acquired, I think, around 2000. Metropolitan Herman. Old bells are actually old bell towers. This is the bell tower we use now.
One last question, Father Stephen, before you continue. Someone asked, of course, when they asked you about the time and length of services, now they want to know what typically the monks do between services.
Good question. So there's various obediences in the monastery. So some people, for example, make candles. We also roast coffee. There's always reading, cooking, various things that need to be done. So it's just kind of whatever really that needs to be done. So, but there's also a lot of grounds here. So there's also usually a lot of yard work, if you will, mowing grass and weeding, things like that. And then of course, when we have snow, shoveling snow.
Actually, I have a question. Yes. I've been intrigued by seeing things on the monastery website about a new water structure on some type of landscaping. What is the monastery doing with that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll show it to you.
See some of the snow showing up.
It's like home.
Yeah.
Your Wi-Fi works pretty good outside, Father.
Ah, thank God.
Here we're building a waterfall.
Oh, they're building a waterfall.
This will be the piece right. See where the church is, it's kind of right in front of the church. The pond here, God willing, the waterfall goes down towards the seminary building.
Oh, that's beautiful. That'd be nice. Oh, you're starting to break up, Father.
Like get this shot from the bottom.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we, I think Father Stephen says we're going to go over to the museum, which is right there, but that will drop. So we'll have to reconnect when we go there.
All right, we'll wait. We'll wait for you. So while they're moving to the other location, does anybody have any questions?
If I
or
make a
comments?
building,
Oh, he's almost there. Well, I don't know if they can hear because he's gonna drop off.
building.
So to answer your question about where the monks live,
Maybe. Well, we'll see.
oh, maybe not. Oh, there he dropped out. So to answer the question about where the monks live, just across from the church, because I don't know.
I haven't.
I don't know that Father will take us back up there. Just outside, when he walked out the front door of the church, there's a building right across directly across from the monastery itself. That's where the monks live, and there's another house full of cells where they stay are called cells. So the cells are behind that building, and then the building just adjacent to the front of the church is the monastery trapeza. That's where we gather with the monks festally to eat after services. So where they would have coffee hour or where they would have a meal like on Pascha or on a feast day, the monks themselves have another trapeza, another dining hall in the monastery building itself where they eat and gather together for, I think, almost every meal on a regular basis, because that's how the rhythm of the monastery is, that not only do they pray and work together, but they also eat together. And it looks like Father Stephen's back, so if he's listening, he can kind of go through there. What we missed, Father, was at least showing them the outside of the actual monastery building when we were there. So they were asking where you lived. So while you were in a break, I was telling them.
Okay. Well, welcome. This is the icon repository and also where we have our music center. So this was all redone this past summer. So we had this wood floor installed, and you see the piano. This is used for the music program, which I think Father Service was talking about, and they have some intensive choir programs on weekends and also a year-long program as well. And this past summer there was I think there was a recording that was done, and a lot of the rehearsals were in this space. So let's see, we have more icons here. One of the more valuable icons that we have here is this one of the protection of the Mother of God, and this is from Old Novgorod from the 17th century. Very distinctive style in that place and period. You can see we have a lot more icons here. In this case here, we have some our more valuable items. Some of these are from the Fabergé factory from St. Petersburg, these silver enamel pieces. We also have the Fabergé egg. This is part of the Guzzi collection. John and Lucille Guzzi were collectors, and they collected icons and Russian antiquities, and they established this icon repository. So it's through their generosity that we have this icon repository. I'll come over this way here. This is an icon that belongs to St. Tsar Nicholas II. We're told this was in his palace, and that he prayed before this, before he was taken by the Bolsheviks, and him and his family were later martyred by the Bolsheviks. A special icon of the Mother of God. And we use this in the church on certain feast days. So we try to use what we can here in the church as appropriate. I'm just going to point out a few things. Over here is an icon as well as a little icon, but a relic of St. Herman of Alaska. And this is made by a native Alaskan man. So it's a piece of native folk art. And so we're honored to have this special reliquary of St. Herman here with us. I don't know if you can see this, but here on the wall we have a couple of icons that are in Arabic. These are from Damascus, Syria, from about 1860. It's one of Christ and the Mother of God. And just point out, this here is an antimons that came from Bhutan Monastery. In 1794, and on it says Empress Katerina, Empress Catherine the Great. She was the Empress of Russia when this came over from Bhutan Monastery to Alaska. So some of the first Orthodox liturgies in America were celebrated on this antimons in Alaska. So we're blessed we have this here. Also, this gospel book here, you can see that this is a translation that St. Innocent and St. Yakov Nesvatov worked on. It's a translation from Russian into Fox Island Aleut. And so on the right side, and this column is the Russian, on the left is the Fox Island Aleut. And you can see that St. Innocent and St. Yakov, they use the Cyrillic alphabet because the Aleuts didn't have a written language, they created an alphabet for them based on the Russian alphabet. So kind of interesting to see. A lot more icons, as you can see. Here are some iconographic images from Japan. These are silk needlework from the Japanese Orthodox Church. Here's a gospel book that's from 1906. It's a gospel book that commemorates the last battle of the Russian-Japanese War. The Russians lost to the Japanese. Inside is a silver plaque of all these sailors that perished in that last battle. And the cover of this is made from war munitions from that battle. So it's actually steel, has sort of a rusty patina to it. And it's very heavy, it must weigh like 40 pounds. This was smuggled out of Russia, and a priest's son actually brought it to the monastery to have here at the museum. So a special gospel book that we have. Here we have another icon, a relic of St. Alexis. And then below it, we have his priest stool and blessing brush and a letter he wrote dated to 1906. Some various photographs here. I don't know if you can see this, but here's a photograph of Patriarch Alexis II when he was here. Patriarch Alexis II was former Patriarch of Russia, and he visited St. Tikhons in 1991. Father Nicholas, were you here then? I don't know. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I was there. Actually sang at that liturgy, so that's quite a memory.
Yeah, the Patriarch of Russia came to St. Tikhons, which is kind of amazing. And with him also was Metropolitan Kirill, who is now Patriarch Kirill. So they both were here. And just a couple Sundays ago, we had Metropolitan Valerian Alfeev, who visited us also from Moscow. So kind of amazing that we have these bishops, patriarchs, and metropolitans from Russia coming to visit here at St. Tikhons. But of course, we were founded by Patriarch Tikhon of Moscow. So there's that.
Father Stephen, if you go back a little bit on the wall the other way, was that an icon of the original, or a painting of the original Dormition Church that was there on the, or no? Maybe I'm mistaken. Was kind
No.
of, no,
No.
okay.
I don't think we have one. We should. We don't have one in the museum, but it's something that does belong here. It's just the museum is curated by Father John Parrish,
Okay.
and so right now we don't really have too much control over things, how they're displayed.
Okay.
Yeah. So just some more ornamental things. I'll also point out here, this is interesting. These tusks and whale and bones. These are animal bones that are carved by Native Alaskans, and only the natives can do this kind of stuff because it's prohibited by law for someone like myself or anyone else to do this kind of stuff. But some very nice artwork that's done by the Native Alaskans that we have here. Go in this corner. This is the original icon of St. Tikhon of Zadonsk from the original monastery Iconostasis from 1905, 1906. So I think I mentioned before, the Iconostasis we have now is from 1965 approximately. This is from the original Iconostasis before the church was redone. So, and here we have some information about our monastery's first abbot, Archbishop Arseny. These are his vestments. He's buried here. He's the founder of both the monastery and the seminary, and it was his idea to have a monastery here, and also he's the one that founded the seminary in 1938. So we're grateful to his labors and prayers and his work, and he's still here with us, so his presence as well. This was his abbot staff. He was only abbot for about a year, and then he went back to Russia. After the Bolshevik Revolution, he was later made a bishop, I believe, in Serbia, and then came back to North America and served as a bishop in Canada for many years, a missionary in Canada. Finally retiring as Archbishop of Winnipeg in 1937, came back to the monastery, and then founded the seminary in 1938. So when we have our Founders Day celebration, it's around the time of his repose, along with St. Tikhon of Moscow's glorification, I believe it is. And those are our two founders, St. Tikhon of Moscow and Father Arseny, later Archbishop Arseny. They both put half the down payment on the property with their own money. They put down half the down payment for the farm that was here, that was purchased to build the monastery. So we're grateful to their personal interest in establishing this monastery. Here also we have an icon, a relic of St. Innocent of Alaska, showing him as Bishop of Alaska. And below it, we have his panagia and Zapivka cup and cuffs. We also have his chalice, but it's not in here right now. It's in the monastery church. But it's something that we use for communion on his feast days, which is twice a year. So we just celebrated one of his feast days in October. So it's still in the monastery church right now. Some more Native Alaskan items here. And you'll notice these crosses. These are done by Native Alaskans. An archpriest in Alaska might wear something like this. And again, handiwork of Native folk art. So we're blessed to have these kind of things here with us now. This is the Vyaza of Metropolitan Leonti, who was a former bishop, and there's an image of him here. He was famous for wearing a white Vyaza all the time. He had a blessing from the Holy Synod of Bishops, the time to wear white. The only other person I know who does that all the time is the Patriarch of Romania. I'm not sure why he does that, but they say that Metropolitan Leonti wanted to dress like it was Pascha all the time. And because of the very difficult times the church was going through, and I'm sure we'll face very difficult times again, if these are not difficult times enough for us, there probably will be more difficult times ahead for us. God give us the grace to go through, endure those tribulations that we might have. The Metropolitan Leonti, even though through the many difficult times that he's endured, he always wanted to dress like it was Pascha, and they said he was a very joyful person, and wearing white was sort of a way of him expressing the joy of the risen Christ all throughout the year. So we're grateful to that. And we have this here to remember him. Let's point this out here. This is the mitre of St. Nikolai Velimirovich. St. Nikolai was a Serbian bishop who was exiled from his native Serbia because of World War II. He'd actually been captured by the Nazis, and he'd been tortured at the Dachau for a year before he was finally released. And he came to North America, and he taught here at St. Tikhons at the seminary, and was an instructor, and later finally the rector of the seminary. The year that he reposed, in 1956, he actually died in the seminary building. A brilliant man, a deeply spiritual man. Again, we're very blessed that he was here. He wasn't buried here though because he was Serbian. The Serbian church took his body and most of his possessions. He was buried at the Serbian monastery in Illinois, Libertyville, Illinois. And then in 1991, he was glorified as a saint. His body and relics were brought back to Serbia, to the village where he was born, and that's where he is now. But we're grateful we have his mitre. We also have some vestments of his, which fortunately I can't show you, they're not here, but we do bring them out occasionally. So if you get, I don't know if you, maybe some of you have read some of his books, but a brilliant man is many people read his books daily. Prologue from Oakwood, Prayers by the Lake. Really, it's a saint that's revered all throughout the world, and we're grateful that he was here. So. These here are some investments that belong to St. Tikhon of Moscow when he was Archbishop in America. These would have been from Russia, handmade. So investments, more investments. There's ornamental egg collection. We'll put this out here. This is interesting. This is some investments. Ryaza from Japan. You'll notice the purple embroidery. It's very Japanese. This is silk. This was a gift that was given to the OCA's first metropolitan. Metropolitan Irene was the first metropolitan of the OCA, but it was formed in 1970. And Metropolitan Irene had formerly been the Bishop of Tokyo, Japan. And this was a gift that was given to him by Emperor Hirohito of Japan. So very unusual, and thus we have this here with us. There's a photograph here. I don't know if you can see. This shows the first All-American Council of the OCA, and this is in the seminary gymnasium across the street. The first All-American Council of the OCA was here at St. Tikhons.
I think the first two.
The first two, thank you. Okay. First two all-American councils. So. Some more icons here. So, thanks for taking your time to listen to the tour. And does anybody else have any more questions I can ask? Or try to hand?
Someone asked how many acres the monastery has, Father Stephen.
That's a good question. I think land it was. I'm not sure how large the Wagner farm was. The farm that originally was here. But over the course of years, there's been additional acreage that's been added to the monastery. But some of that acreage was granted to the seminary. So not all of it. I think originally it was around 300 acres, but some of that was given to the seminary so they would have assets like land. The seminary has since acquired new properties. So just in the last couple of years, I think they've acquired another, I don't know, 60 acres.
Yeah.
So there's that. So between the monastery and seminary, it might be 360 acres. I'm not sure.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Someone also asked what the oldest relic is that the monastery has. Do we have a relic of the cross at the monastery?
Yes.
Yes.
I actually have a relic of the Virgin's belt. I don't know which would be older.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would probably be the closest answer to oldest, either the belt of the Virgin or the cross itself.
And then also in the also in the monastery church, we have a relic of St. John the Baptist.
They have relics of all the apostles.
We have relics of all the
Okay.
apostles.
Well, yeah. So okay. So it's a toss up. Anyone else have any questions for Father Stephen before we thank him and the monks for allowing us this tour and retreat today? Anybody else? I'm not seeing or hearing any others. Thank you, Father Ignatius and Father Stephen, and give our thanks. Wait, maybe there's another question. No. How many? Well, they want to know how many vestment relics you have. So I think if you look around the room there's quite a few, plus the ones that are in the monastery church that we don't know that they're relics yet that have been worn by holy men and women. So there's a lot. So we have the I'm not able to show it to you, but we have the mantilla of Saint Tikhon that he wore in the Kremlin in Moscow when he was made patriarch in 1973. Oh, wow.
And that was smuggled out of Russia. It was eventually given to Metropolitan Herman, and now we have it.
They have like St. Herman's belt too, someplace.
I'm not sure if we have that right now, but this sort we kind of do through Father John Parrish.
Yeah.
St. Herman's belt is, but it's not here in the museum right now. So,
well, on behalf of the National FOCA, Father Stephen, I'd like to thank you for giving us something better to do on what they call Black Friday than standing outside of a Best Buy waiting to get in to buy something that will be useful for about 10 minutes. You gave us something that will be useful for years and years to come. So we're thankful for that.
And by all means, if you can come visit, this is not the same thing as actually being here. So I hope you all can visit someday.
Well, I can tell you personally that the first time I visited it, I found it very hard to leave for several decades, and now it's still home even though I'm far away. So we look forward to the day when we can spend time on the monastery grounds beyond COVID and in the presence of other faithful in prayer. So thank you again.
Thank you, Father Nicholas. Thank you.
All right, God bless you. All right, everybody, we're going to finish a little early, it seems, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I hope you all enjoyed your time at the monastery with Father Sergius and with the monks as much as I did today. We will in the future, I'm sure, probably around the beginning of Great Lent, plan another Sunday retreat like we did the last time. with some speakers and some things. So have you keep for yourselves or for your parents, keep an eye out either on the FOCA website or on Facebook to look for the retreats. Hopefully in time, not only will we be able to provide you something virtually, but to give you something where we can actually get together physically, either regionally or across the nation. Do any of you have any questions for me? Okay, then seeing no questions for me, God bless you and enjoy your day, and thank you for coming.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
You say turn on the mic. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.